think we can prepare our students with a strong liberal arts education that will prepare them for change and to advance in their careers in almost any area. But we can also, at the same time, prepare them really well for a jumping off point in a terrific career. And if they do make pivots, they are the best prepared to do that as well.
Welcome to Small College America, a podcast dedicated to exploring the role and value of small colleges in the higher education landscape throughout the U.S. I'm Kent Barnds, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dean Hoke. Dean?
Thank you very much, Kent. Today we are speaking with Dean McCurdy, president of Colby-Sawyer College in New Hampshire. Dr. McCurdy has been an innovative leader at small college, particularly in the liberal arts field, and also at large public community colleges. Prior to joining Colby-Sawyer in June, Dean was provost and senior vice president for academic affairs at Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana, which, by the way, has an enrollment of more than 200,000 students. In his various roles with the system, Dean spurred record enrollment, boosted student achievement through experiential education. Prior to that, he was also at Kalamazoo Valley Community College as Associate Vice President for Instruction, where he launched a health-focused campus that catalyzed community revitalization and workforce development through sustainable food education and preparation. Dean is an ecologist and also a tenured professor at Albion College and an award-winning researcher of marine systems. Earlier in his career, he was a visiting professor of biology and a field manager of the Coastal Studies Center of Bowdoin. Dean holds a bachelor's degree with honors in biology from Acadia University and a doctorate in biology from Carleton University. And Dean, good to see you. And I also hear you have one other certification we were just talking about before we started the show. Would you care to tell the audience?
Yes, sure, Dean. So I'm also a mechanic, a licensed mechanic, and earned a number of other credentials around that from two-year colleges as an educator. It's great. Whenever I haven't taught something, I've tried to be a student.
That's fantastic.
Well, I think, Dean, that this is the first mechanic we've had on the program. So welcome. And I'm going to have to be really careful with this particular show when we've got Dean Hoke and Dean McCurdy. Lots of Deans here. So it's great to have you. And I'm going to kick things off. Dean McCurdy, we would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about Colby-Sawyer and what makes it distinctive. Love to hear a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you, Kent. So I've been at Colby-Sawyer College as the 10th president since early June of this year. So it's still wet cement, still getting used to the situation. Colby-Sawyer is a beautiful small private college of about 1,000 students in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. So that's central New Hampshire, just south of the White Mountains and about 90 minutes north of Boston. We were founded back in 1837, like a lot of our small colleges, and as a co-educational prep school. The New London Academy, the name changed a number of times over the years, but around the late 1920s, Colby-Sawyer became a women's two-year college. So it went from co-ed to women's, and then later became a four-year college. And then in 1990, became co-educational again. So lots of innovation and change in the history of Colby-Sawyer. About 7 years ago, the college chose to sharpen its focus really on healthcare and began adding graduate programs at the same time. In fact, we just had our first students from our only doctoral program, which is a DNP, graduate this spring. We are unique in a variety of ways, and as a two-year college, we really serve the region and fill the gap in higher education in many directions. One example is we operate a lab school and development center for children that's open to children ages 13 months to 5 years of age. And this year will actually be the 50th year, 2026 will be, that we've offered that type of program. It's part of the early childhood program as well. Our distinctiveness is really how we combine the liberal arts foundational model with experiential education. Many of the things that I saw at two-year colleges actually that Colby-Sawyer as a small private liberal arts college has adopted as well. So every student does internships, capstone experiences on and off campus, and a variety of work and learn experiences are infused in the curriculum as well.
Well, let's go down this path a little bit. I mean, we've known each other for a little while, and one of the things that I was fascinated by is that you were at Ivy Tech, which is one of the largest community college systems in the United States. Over what, 200,000, I think is the number,
Yeah.
something like that. And you're at a school now that has approximately 1,000, which seems to be a little bit different. And in terms of what you do, but where I'm going with this is that I'm fascinated about the thoughts of what you learned at Ivy and how you can apply those, particularly now as a president in a small liberal arts school in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that is the question that I probably hear the most. And of course, I started my career at small private colleges and then came full circle now back to a small private college, but have been at a couple of very different kinds of institutions in between, as you said. So obviously, there are clear differences, right? Going from a 2 year school with mostly part-time students, largely an adult population at the community college, coming back to a 4 year where we have mostly full-time students and they're residential for the most part at Colby-Sawyer. There's a lot of lessons I would apply from the community college, just as there were a lot of lessons from the small college world I applied when I went to community college world for over a decade there. A few things though. One would be the need to be aligned to the workforce. And to think about where your students are going to live and work after they graduate. At Ivy Tech, we were really obsessed about this, as most community colleges are. And I mean that in a good way. Staying very agile and working backwards from what the outcomes needed to look like, knowing that our students had very limited resources and limited time in particular was the most limiting resource for them. They were typically working often a full-time job. So we really had to be incredibly focused on that return on investment, short and long term, and that stackability in the credentials that we were offering. Did the programs line up with the outcomes that we needed to see? So that was certainly one thing. And I would certainly say, especially for the regional 4 year colleges, you see them, including Colby-Sawyer, really leaning into that a lot more. And I'm sure we'll discuss that some as well. But another thing that I would say that the 2 year college world really taught me is that there are plenty of students out there who need us, right? And that sounds obvious on the surface. Um, we rarely look a lot as you know, in the small college, 4 year college world, beyond our traditional high school graduates, and why we need to remain focused on that market. It's incredibly important. In the next few years, we know, of course, that population, in particular in New England, is going to decline about 15% or so, beginning with this high school class this year. An example of where we did that at Ivy Tech was we looked, of course, at the adult learners. And in Indiana, we had 2 million Hoosiers that had some college and no degree. And, we realized that's an enormous market, right? That wasn't being served particularly well. And so there's a huge opportunity for a college of any type, really, to engage. And then the other end of the spectrum, we looked a lot at students who were in high school to see how college could begin to be infused and into high schools and serve students there, providing, closing that gap between college and high school. So we had about 100,000 high school students in Indiana now that we oversaw that, were completing some college level work, and many were completing certificates, earning certifications, and building stackable credentials toward the degree. So that was certainly something that was very eye-opening to me, to see how you can really think of enrollment in many different buckets, rather than just the traditional one or two that the private college world historically has served. And then the third thing I would say is, just as I mentioned earlier, the need to be agile. At Ivy Tech, for example, we did a program review. We did a review of every program every year, sometimes more often than that. And we revised, somewhere between a quarter and a third of our course catalog, top to bottom, every year. We had about 75 curriculum committees. Our running joke was there was always a curriculum committee meeting somewhere. And you would think for a large college, you'd move slowly, but in fact, we moved very fast. So I think, when you contrast this with the program review cycle that most small colleges are on, which is 4 to 6 years for a program, we really need to speed that up. to be, to meet the needs that our students and our partners have today. So those were certainly a few things that I noticed right away that were very different, that I certainly want to bring back to that small college world.
Well, that's great. I love the emphasis on speed. That's not typically what we do in higher ed, especially at small private colleges where the pace is glacial in nature. So I appreciate that, especially when talking about such a large institution with significant complexity. The whole concept of workforce development, I think, is something that is really intriguing. When Dean and I talked about this, we're really interested in you helping us understand the role of a small college in workforce development. I think sometimes small colleges can dilute themselves into saying, "Oh, well, we prepare our students to do anything," right? They have the
Yeah.
skills to be prepared to do whatever their hearts desire and wherever the liberal arts take them. You have a little bit of a different view on how important it is for colleges to be in tune to workforce development, and especially in their area. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and where Colby-Sawyer is headed with this whole idea of workforce development?
Yeah, I love that. I love this question, as I think you know. And it's interesting because, of course, I think it's not an either or. I think we can prepare our students with a strong liberal arts education that will prepare them for change and to advance in their careers in almost any area. But we can also, at the same time, prepare them really well for a jumping off point in a terrific career. And if they do make pivots, they are the best prepared to do that as well. So we can do both of those things, I believe. I think a lot of it comes down to, in particular with our small colleges, we are really the centers for learning in our communities. And we need to, just like we did at Ivy Tech, at a very large college, at any scale, we need to work backwards from what our partners need, our community organizations and employers that we work with every day, understanding what their needs are so we can understand better what the opportunities look like for our students and how we can help meet them. So I'm a real believer in looking at the situation that way. And that helps guide you as to where you might want to grow, and also how you can then bring your employers and partners along with you, including in the recruitment process. So at Colby-Sawyer, we've begun to do this, and I take no credit for this. I've been here 4 months, and we've done this now for several years, in particular in healthcare, which of course is an area a lot of small colleges are either looking to pivot toward or looking to grow into, because we all see the clear need there, right? So in our region, for example, we're the largest provider of nurses. So even though we're a very small college, over 20% of all the nurses that are working in the healthcare system in our region of central New Hampshire, very large geographical rural area, are graduates of our college. But we need to do much more, right? We need to, and we're actually in a process right now of working with some of our healthcare partners to understand what is their full need, because that will then guide whether we focus our efforts on recruiting more students, or do we focus our efforts on, recruiting more students just from this area? Do we need to widen the top of the funnel? All of that. Another major role, though, I think in the workforce area is that we can be a connector and a convener. And I would point to the 2-year colleges that do this really well. Community is in their name, at least in most of their names. But of course, our small colleges of any type can do this really well and are uniquely positioned to do this well. That you can be a small college and play a big role in a small town, for example, right? And there's a real interdependency there. Again, at our lab school, for example, our child development facility is a good example. It provides an essential service in our community and a great learning opportunity for students. At the moment, we're actually in the midst of developing a new strategic plan at Colby-Sawyer. And it's already clear we've met with over 500 individuals and organizations in the last couple of months in developing that. But we're going to need to form deeper partnerships in our communities to do that. And understanding the workforce needs is critical to all of that conversation. So, for example, it's beyond just the educational needs. It's how do we partner to provide housing, for example, right? We have a lot of young professionals in the community that need a place to live as they transition from college into career. And of course, small colleges have residence halls In some cases, they may have capacity there, right? So how do we address a community need that's a win for the community, a win for the college, a win for the students and our graduates? That is all workforce connectedness that we need to start to think about. So that's a little bit of how we're addressing that. But I think really leaning into the region and seeing us not only as education providers, but as economic development entities, which of course we are.
Well, I'd like to stay with that a little bit, but I also want to talk about something that I think has to do with so many small colleges, and that's the concept of tradition. And Colby-Sawyer is well known for a tradition such as Mountain Day, and you're going to get to talk about that. And which brings the students and the faculty and the staff together in rather unique ways, I think. But I guess what I want to do with that is also tie in the change that's also happening. So how do you balance honoring these traditions with ensuing students gain the skills and the experiences that they need for a changing workforce? I'm very curious about how you put those two items together.
Yeah, a great question. So these are some of the most fun and meaningful things, of course, that occur on our college campuses. And, we tend to focus a lot, of course, on the academic needs, understandably, of our students. We need to meet those. And we focus and talk a lot about the financial needs. I think these traditions in many ways can play a key role in helping to support the social and emotional needs of our students as well. Mountain Day is a fun example of this. It's a tradition that goes back over 170 years at Colby-Sawyer College. And at 10:05 on a day in the fall that the president chooses, this is my most important responsibility, I was told, coming in. When that bell rings and we have a senior student, we bring them in. They have no idea what's going on. And we tell them, it's Mountain Day. And then we take them upstairs and they ring the bell. And then students go up. And of course, I've experienced this once. It was a little over a week ago. Students go running out of class, yelling Mountain Day. They all have tie-dye shirts that they've made in advance that hopefully have dried by that point. We did an early Mountain Day this year because the weather was great. But they climb on the buses. They go to Mount Kearsarge. That's about a 5-minute drive from the campus. And they climb up another 1,000 feet to the summit of Mount Kearsarge. All together, hundreds and hundreds of students doing this at the same time, faculty, staff as well. It's incredible, right? Another tradition that I'll mention here that we're really proud of at Colby-Sawyer is we produce our own maple syrup. So we collect it and process it. And I say this because in addition to the social emotional piece, there are, academic lessons in this work. And as these traditions have continued, the lessons and where this fits into the curriculum has changed. So we actually have a syrup making course, but of course, it's also really a course about understanding how businesses operate, the supply chain system, and the labels on the maple syrup are produced by our graphic design students. So they're learning about branding and visual identities. We have some great vintages of syrup in my office. This goes back many years as well. So again, we can use these traditions to reinforce the types of skills and experiences that our students are learning about in the classroom, in the labs, in the community. It's time to reflect. It's time to build teamwork. And, these are the skills that our employers and partners are telling us that they want citizens to have, employees to have in order to be productive in the workforce and ultimately to lead. When you're standing on the top of Mount Kearsarge, it really does literally put things in perspective. You see the college down there as a dot. You see the White Mountains. You can see Mount Washington. You can see even Boston the other way. It's incredible, and there's fellowship involved. And I'll mention one other thing that is a new tradition that I've got to be part of in the last few weeks, and that is that we've added lighting to our turf field for the first time ever. Took 14 years. I got to come in at the very end of that. Thank you to the previous presidents who worked on that project to make that happen. It's our Sally Shaw Beach athletic field. And the turnout in the first night games, it's been amazing. And not just the students, but the community has come out in huge numbers for Division III, teams. So that's a new tradition we're going to be looking to build on. And again, there's so many lessons that we can use to connect that into the academic work the students are doing, but also as they transition, into adulthood and into their careers.
That's awesome, Dean. Thank you. I think that connects directly to our next question. You've emphasized, and in a prep call, you talked a little bit about the importance of telling alumni success stories and how important that is to the overall message and brand of an institution. Would you mind sharing a story that captures the impact of a Colby-Sawyer education and how alumni stories help define the college's value for future students? And who knows, it may be directly related to bottling maple syrup. So
I could certainly use examples there too, but it as a longtime member of the faculty at a small college, other than the students, the alumni, of course, are what really fuels your work and motivates you. And it's no different as a president of a small college. I've had a chance to meet a lot of alumni one-on-one, had an event last night with 80 mostly younger alumni, which was pretty incredible. So picking a single alum, it's like picking your favorite child in many ways, but I'll still give an example. It really is incredible though what our graduates do, right? They're running small businesses and everything from farming to childcare to conducting biomedical research and leading various types of organizations, large and small. But one example that I think that captures the formal and informal value of a Colby-Sawyer education and the grit that our students have an opportunity to develop would be Ethan Casson, who's a 1996 graduate in sports management. And he's done a number of things in his career. Ethan's a recent past CEO of the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx basketball. And in July, he became the new president of the NBA's Dallas Mavericks team. So what Ethan did, though, in his career, he's applied the academic skills and the experiential learning and throughout his career. He also credits a lot of his time as a student athlete in his development, and of course, desire to go directly into the field that he's in, but also with the kinds of experiences that allowed him to be successful. So, he had 2 internships when he was a Colby-Sawyer student, and then did at least 4 more after he graduated. To build the network necessary that he had started building as a student here. At one point he was the San Francisco 49ers vice president for various things, corporate relations and revenue and COO, and, helped secure things like the naming rights to Levi Stadium and pretty impressive career. But what I really wanted to focus on Ethan about is, like all great alumni, he's also giving back to the college and, in many ways. And most recently last year, he started a series with us called Beyond the Game and worked a lot with our athletic director, Jen McKillop, who's a real dynamo. And the two of them developed this concept where we have a series of speakers that come and speak to all of our students, in particular our student athletes, which is over 40% of all of our students. And the idea is to give them insights into how to navigate life beyond sports and beyond college. And so, Ethan is continuing as he builds his professional network to open that up to our students, current and future. And that's really when I think of alumni that are at the pinnacle of what we would ask alumni to do. It's to come back to the college, tell us what worked well, what didn't work well, what we need to change, what we should reinforce that we're already doing well. And he's done all of that for us. So, and it's great that he's also, of course, had tremendous success in his career as well.
Well, I must admit, that the part that fascinates me, of course, besides a 1996 graduate doing all that in less than 30 years, is rather remarkable. But also a student athlete that has a liberal arts background has done this. Says quite a bit about the school and a lot about what may be a perception about athletes, which is they're pretty adaptable. And that liberal arts education seems to help quite a bit in terms of that adaptability that they need.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible. Of course, at my previous college, we did not have athletics. It's been many years since I was at a college that had athletics, and we have a very active Division III athletics program and Division I in alpine skiing. And having the chance to have that be part of my life again has just been tremendous. And as you know, you attend, you go to a tennis match or you go to a volleyball game, and within about 5 minutes, you're hooked. And then you can't miss another one because you need to see how how these chapters will unfold, and you're watching students develop in real time, which is pretty incredible.
Well, I think we're coming towards the end, but I do have one last question, which we ask almost everybody on the program. And we want you to, again, be a futurist. We want you to look into that famous crystal ball. And I want you to look maybe 5 years in the future. And what gives you the most hope for Colby-Sawyer? And most broadly, for the role of small colleges in American higher education? What do you see?
Yeah, so of course our small colleges are, in particular, our private colleges are pretty unique in higher ed. I grew up in Canada where you really didn't have that in the landscape at all. And as soon as I discovered them, it's one of those things, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it just makes so much sense in terms of what best develops an individual to be a productive citizen and a leader. I'm really excited about the future despite all the challenges. And I think actually, the pressure from these challenges that we're facing right now, the perception of higher ed issue, the demographical cliff, all of that is going to help drive innovation. We have the raw material in our small colleges to be incredibly innovative, as you know. So I think the landscape will look very different in 5 years, but not entirely new. I think we'll see a lot of deepening partnerships, especially in our small regional scale, small colleges. A lot like we've talked about with nursing and health sciences that you see at Colby-Sawyer and many small colleges that are in that space now. And this will be in the traditional academic space, but again, also how we address community needs. As I mentioned, for us, it will mean things like how we expand our child development opportunities to help support the community as the largest provider of some of those services as well, and how we weave that into our educational programs. The innovative housing option I mentioned is, I think, I see us really getting together much more to try to address those big issues, which no one organization can do alone. It will take all of us to do that. And I think the college may drive some of these, but it may also be a convener in other cases and a trusted partner. Within our college itself, we're embarking on it. I come in at an amazing time. We're due for a new strategic plan and also due to review our liberal arts core, which of course doesn't happen every year. What's been really exciting for me in working with our faculty is that we're excited about, how do we reinforce those liberal arts values and competencies that have always existed and need to continue to exist, right? The ability of critical thinking and written and oral communication, and the ability to work on a team and ultimately lead a team. But infusing that with technology, right, which I'm sure is a common theme you hear about these days. What won't change is the high quality of the experience that we do, the personal attention, the high level of engagement that our small colleges provide, but the tools that we begin to bring into that. Yes, I have to mention AI once. So I would say, as an example, right, if you are designing that liberal arts curriculum today, what level of technological literacy would need to be added to that? I would argue some. But what's really valuable is then how you leverage that. And we know a traditional liberal arts education is the best form of education to make the judgments with technology like AI and to make ethical decisions around its use. So I think while you will still see very much the value and the positive outcomes that type of traditional education provides, but it may look a little different as we infuse other elements into it and weave those through the curriculum. And then the last thing I'd say is in our rural communities, they need our small colleges. There are cultural centers. At Colby-Sawyer, this is the place that you come to work out, to swim in a pool, and for lifelong learning. We have an enormous number of lifelong learners and retirees. That's over a third of the population is over 65 in this region. It's actually closer to 40%. And so that's both an opportunity to serve a unique population of students, but also to take the lifelong experiences of the community and bring them in to help support our traditional student population.
Well, Dean, thank you. First, thank you for reminding us that small colleges are centers for learning and workforce connectedness in our communities. That's an important reminder for our listeners, and I can imagine all of our listeners would agree with you. But also, thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your vision for Colby-Sawyer and small colleges more broadly. For those of you listening, if you'd like to learn more about Small College America, we invite you to go to our webpage at www.smallcollegeamerica.net, where you can find details on upcoming episodes. You can contact us, you can suggest a topic you'd like to cover, or even suggest a guest. This episode of Small College America is made possible with underwriting support from Perspective Data Science, a firm specializing in AI-powered tools and data solutions, including the Financial Compass platform. On behalf of our guest, Dean McCurdy, and my co-host, Dean Hoke, thank you very much for listening. It was great to have you, Dean.